Welcome to Weapons to Use. In this video I'll tell you what weapons you can use in a Counter-Strike game. You can almost use any weapon, and I'll tell you which weapons you can use and why you can use them, and which weapons you can't use and why I think it's bad to use them. Some certain weapons have only a very specific use, so I'll commentate on that as well. First we're going to start off with the pistols, and the starting pistol of the terrorist, the Glock, and the starting pistol of the counter-terrorist, the P2000, are both quite nice pistols. As you can see, they have a very high accuracy, and this means you can practically shoot at the target while running. If you start the round and you want to buy a flashbang, a nade and a smoke grenade, then you can perfectly still have these weapons because you have those grenades. Next up is the P250. It's a really nice weapon. It has quite high firepower and the accuracy is not that bad. It also only costs 500, so this still makes you able to buy a grenade if you want that. The 5.7 is almost never used. If you buy this weapon in the first round, this means you won't have enough money to buy anything other. Added to that is the fact that it has very little firepower, and the biggest advantage is the movement rate, but the movement rate of all pistols is still quite high, so the 5.7 is never used. The Desert Eagle is very often used, but in a different, or most often in a different situation than the other pistols, because the Desert Eagle kills with one shot. As you can see, the biggest thing is its firepower. This means the Desert Eagle is exceptionally good against people with armor, because if they stand on close range they will be dead with one shot. The fact, however, that it only has 7 bullets, and the P250 is also capable of delivering a one-shot kill if the if the opponent has no armor. This means that on the first round people most often will not buy the Desert Eagle, but will opt to go for the P250 because it will still kill in one shot if you make a headshot, but you will be also able to buy a grenade. Later on in the round, say you have an AWP, you will buy a Desert Eagle, because if there is someone with armor coming at you, you can kill them in one shot. Dual Berettas are nice. If you really like them, you can pick them up. The disadvantage is of course that you can't buy anything. You can't buy a flash, you can't buy a grenade, but it has 30 bullets in its magazine, so you might argue they're really good at stopping rushes. I mean, if you have one opponent you can perfectly kill them with only 13 bullets, but if there are 4 enemies coming at you, you might need 30 rounds. So that's a good thing. The bad thing, however, is that you can't buy anything else, so you might want to argue to yourself, do I want that much bullets, or do I want 13 bullets, or maybe 20 or 13 again, and grab, let's say, a flashbang or a grenade. But the Dual Berettas are not really a really bad pickup. You can pick up them if you thought about it and you argue to yourself and you like them, you can pick them up. Moving on, often bought in the second round are the SMGs. They are bought in the second round because you don't have enough cash, unless you make a lot of kills, to buy a M4 for example, but you do want to have a weapon to, especially if you win the first round, you want to keep that advantage, and by buying an SMG you can keep that advantage because the other players won't have any cash to buy a weapon, and with an SMG you can kill them. The MP9 is quite weak, and if you win the first round, I wouldn't really buy an MP9 because it's a bit controversial, because this is so cheap that I say I wouldn't buy it. The P90, I'll come back to that later, is too expensive, I would say, so I wouldn't buy it as well. This thing is just really weak, and the high fire rate also means you have a lot of spraying is getting harder, because the accuracy also isn't that high, so I would most often just go for the MP7. The MP7, you gotta think to yourself, what is the purpose of buying this weapon? And most often the purpose is to just shoot at people who don't have any armor and don't have any weapons, because they just lost the first round, they have nothing, they're not buying anything. and that's why I think the MP7 is good enough to do its job. You get the 300% kill award, so that makes it very easy, and this also means that if you buy the MP7, then in the third or fourth round you will have enough cash to switch over to the M4. I'll come back to that later in the video about the money system, but I would most often opt for the MP7. The UMP is a bad rifle. It only has 25 bullets. It's not really that much more cheap than the MP7. Yeah, the fact it has only 25 bullets, it's a weird SMG. It's not really worth the cost. The P90, it has really high fire rate. You can spray with it, you can run with it and still hit the target quite well. The fact however is that it costs a lot of money, so I would not buy this SMG. Again, I will come back to this more specific in the later videos about the money system and sorts. The PP Bison is a nice weapon, but the difference you should note is that the kill award is default. This means that I would only pick up this weapon if I want to force a win, force the round. So that means if I lose the first round and yet we still decide to go for an SMG, I won't have that much cash and I would opt to go for the PP Bison, because it has a lot more bullets than the MP9 and it's practically the same. The fire rate is a little bit lower, but it has way more bullets and you won't have that much cash, so buying a MP7 for example is what I would think a bad thing, because that's when you can't buy a flashbang or a nade. So these are, the PP Bison is a counter buy weapon, and I would most often just buy the MP7 if you win the first round. Moving on, shotguns. They also give the high kill award, and sometimes you can opt to go for a shotgun. If you're standing at apartments, by the way, on Inferno for example, and you have a very straight path where you can shoot at, you can just wait for them, peek out and then return. And that's in a situation where the shotgun is quite good. You have to keep in mind though that you can't jump anymore. In previous Counter-Strikes you could jump in the air and then shoot right on the target with the shotgun, so that isn't possible anymore. So I wouldn't pick it up that often, but sometimes on a very specific situation, on a very specific spot, you can pick up the shotgun. As a terrorist I would never pick up the shotgun, because you can't really choose what engagement you will take. As a counter-terrorist you can choose to go in close, and that's when the shotgun will often be a one hit kill. As a counter-terrorist you can't really choose where the counter-terrorist is standing, so that means a shotgun is only good in certain situations. So if they decide to stand at long range, your shotgun will be worthless. Never buy an auto shotgun, it's too expensive. A shotgun is only good at close range, and if you're standing at close range and you make a headshot, it will most often be a one hit kill. The machine guns are really expensive and are not really good, and this is because the accuracy of both weapons is quite low, and this means that a machine gun will most often lose from someone with an M4 if they're somewhat skilled in Counter-Strike. Rifles. The second round, instead of buying a SMG you can also buy a FAMAS, and that's a really good weapon to buy if you're standing at a long range point, because the FAMAS has it isn't as much a spray weapon, it's more a burst weapon. I can show you that by the way really quick. So if you're standing at middle, I like to buy a FAMAS. If it's the second round and the terrorists won't have any weapons, they sometimes rush over there, and the FAMAS is capable of making that headshot and one hit kill, or they will go too short and you can stand like here to get the easy kills. So it's not always good to buy an SMG the first round. Sometimes the FAMAS just really suits your spot, and yeah, that makes it a good weapon. I'm resetting the buy time. M4. This is the weapon you'll see most often used. It's a very nice weapon, and probably 12 rounds, no, 10 rounds you would want to buy an M4. If you can buy, you want to buy an M4. Of course, some teams always have the standard AWPer. If you're the AWPer, you want to buy the AWP, but most players will always run with an M4. The Scout, or the SSG-08 as it's called today, is a bad weapon. A skilled player with an M4 will be just as good as the Scout, and with the M4 you can just take so much more engagements. You can stand close range, you can spray, you can kill 2 people at practically the same time, while the Scout is just not capable of doing all that. The Scout is only good in a 1v1. If you only see his head, then the Scout is a good weapon. That's never the case, so I would never buy the Scout. You're better off just buying a FAMAS. The AUG is almost the same as the M4, except for the fact that it has a scope, but in a competitive game you will never see someone use the scope. It has, I think the accuracy is 1 higher. Yeah, that's not really worth the money. I mean, if you're experienced, you can control the spray pattern of the M4, and that means the accuracy doesn't matter, and with the M4 the first 2 bullets are dead on target, and with the AUG that's the same, but that doesn't mean you can't buy the M4. So the AUG is also, it's too expensive, it's not really better than the M4, so I wouldn't buy it. AWP, obviously a very good weapon. Every team will always opt to get 1 AWP if they can. A 1-hit kill, except if you hit the legs, and if you're skilled with it you can be really good. Very good weapon. I must say, however, if you have 5 AWPs in your team, you'll probably lose the round if the other team notices, because they can exploit that fact. So never buy more than 2 or 3 AWPs. 3 is too much actually. Never buy more than 2 AWPs, because that makes you vulnerable for rushes with smokes or certain stuff like that. The auto sniper is again not really a good weapon. It isn't a 1-hit kill unless you hit their head, and if you don't hit their head, that means you will be spraying a bit, but if you're spraying with an auto sniper, the spray is really hard to control, and that means it's more a luck based weapon. I mean, it's really, the accuracy is really high, but still it's really hard to spray opponents down. 1 opponent is easy, but if there are 2 opponents, it's not a very good weapon. And with an AWP it's easier to just pick one off, go behind cover and pick the other one off. Because it takes more time to kill an opponent with an auto sniper than it does with an AWP. Rifles, gear, you would always want a Kevlar with a helmet. If you buy a weapon, it's worth the money to invest in a Kevlar with helmet. Grenades, the incendiary grenade, I'm not sure yet, it's a nice grenade, but you have to have a special use for it. If you buy it and say, I don't know when I'm gonna use it yet, but it's nice to have, I wouldn't buy it, because the smoke grenade has more purposes, and the incendiary grenade is most often just used to lock down a certain area to prevent them from rushing, for example. It's also really expensive, so this means you can only buy it if you have a lot of cash, and you really got to have a purpose in mind when you buy it. The decoy grenade, good teams will quickly notice when it's a decoy grenade, so it's yeah, I don't really, you can use it in certain tactics. Let's say that if I'm playing alone on a classic competitive game, I wouldn't buy a decoy grenade, because the decoy grenade is only good when it's integrated in a big tactic, and it might be useful then. Flashbang, very good, obviously. Explosive grenade, also very good. And a smoke grenade, really nice to have. Most often, just buy these 3. Back to the terrorist side. The terrorist side is almost the same, except for the fact that it has the Tech 9. The Tech 9 does a lot of damage, and this makes it a viable option. Also, it isn't as expensive, so this means you will still be able to buy a flashbang or grenade, for example. The accuracy is low, but it makes up for that because it has 32 bullets, so you might want to pick it up. I like the P250 more, but it's not a bad weapon. SMGs are all the same. Rifles, AK, very good weapon of course, and the Galil. Like I said with the FAMAS, the Galil is good in certain situations. If you are going for a tactic the second round that you want to be going into a long range engagement, let's say you go to long A, you might want to buy a Galil. The kill ward is default, but it's still a really nice weapon, and you can shoot here or prevent people from going lowers if you want that. And I forgot to mention that on the counter-terrorist side, but the Galil is also a weapon you want to buy if you're forced to buy. If you're playing on the 15th round and you don't have the weapon, or you don't have the cash to buy an AK, you want to buy a Galil, because you can burst down people with an M4. If you're buying a P90, which is almost a little bit more expensive even, the chances of you winning a battle against a M4 are quite low if you're playing against skilled opponents, while when you buy the Galil you can just double tap their head and they'll die. Out sniper is a little bit different I think, but it's the same principle. I wouldn't buy the out sniper. Oops. So yeah, and the Molotov even has a less of a purpose, I would say, than on the counter-terrorist side. You can use it to defend the bomb spot, but it's really expensive, and I wouldn't want to. Then again, I would really want to smoke grenade, because the smoke grenade I can use to take a bomb spot, and I can use it to get myself into a nice position when I'm defending the bomb spot, for example. The Molotov only is used, I can't use it to take the bomb spot because the counter-terrorist can just move away from it. It's only used when defending a bomb spot. So, really expensive. I wouldn't buy it unless you have a very specific purpose for it. Then of course it's a very nice grenade.